technical, I guess, from the prior meetings, and hopefully this is all set and works out a little bit better this time
We
around.
are now going next in that Christmas remark.
So there we go. All right. Please join me for thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of the Republic
And one nation under God, indivisible, and justice for all.
First of all, we have citizen participation. Is there anybody out there that has anything? Any questions or comments for the select board this time?
Yes, Rich Domaraki.
Okay, Rich.
I have two comments I'd like to make. Several months ago, all three select board members publicly directed the town administrator to keep citizen participation on the agenda. And it seems to stay on for 2 or 3 meetings, then all of a sudden it's taken off. I'd like to know why. Who decides to take off citizen participation? It's been on the agenda, I would say, for the last 10 years. It's always been at the beginning of the agenda. Now, there was one time when it was on the agenda, and I believe the town administrator had it at the end of the meeting, end of the agenda. Now, how can you expect Granby residents to wait 1 or 2 hours for the end of the meeting to speak? I mean, that's telling them you don't want them to speak. So I do have to give the school committee a lot of credit because they have citizen participation on all their meetings, whether they were before the pandemic or after, and they always ask if there's anyone who wants to speak. So I would hope that the select board continues to have it on their agenda. My second.
Rich, I know you and I spoke briefly about this some time ago, about probably about a month ago. And so from here on moving forward, it will be on the agenda for each scheduled meeting. And I anticipate actually each scheduled meeting that we have as a normal scheduled meeting for the select board. So the first Mondays of the month are our scheduled meeting, and for that piece, the participation will be on that. And we're actually going to work out a system too, so that when people want to speak, we're often they have to connect with the Chris Martin beforehand. There's a process when the meeting is going. People show up, there's a process. People sign up to speak. So we're going to work on that process for a little over live now. As far as being on video, I think it's something very simple for us to create. So moving forward for this day, each regular scheduled board meeting, there will be citizen participation at the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, could I mention my second comment?
Yes.
Okay, my second comment is on the quality of audio of the online select board meetings. To me, it's just not acceptable. I would think that you would have issues for maybe 1 or 2 meetings, but not 10 or 12 meetings. After 10 or 12 meetings, like I understood probably 25% of what you just said, Glenn. I can't understand everything you say. The echoing, noise, and static, etc., prevents Granby residents from understanding what is being said. I actually considered calling the Attorney General's office and reporting a violation of the open meeting law, because if people can't understand what you're saying, that is a violation. Residents have to be able to hear what is being said. I have listened to other meetings. I've listened to school committee meetings, Board of Health meetings, Finance Committee meetings, and library meetings online, and they had some minor issues, but I was able to understand everything they said. only the select board is having trouble with their meetings. And so something has to be done. So I hope it gets corrected. Even, like I say, I only understood probably 25% of what you just said. Thank you.
Okay. Is there anybody else that's still having issues hearing what's being said?
Hi, Glenn, it's John. Just let you know that here, if you want us to discuss, there are 3 of the warrant articles that we are currently opposed to. And if we're going to want to have a conversation about those, we're glad to participate. Don't want to.
We'll get that. I'm just trying to take care of the issue that we have with the audio. And I hear everything again. And I know some time ago, we worked on that, we had worked. I've watched several other meetings, and when I've seen, everybody is calling in remotely. I think we are not available for the actually meet together in the same that I've seen wrong, but from the meeting that I've watched, that's what I've seen. I don't know if that's an issue. We're going to reach out to Al to see if there's something that can be done. But I know a couple weeks ago we worked it out and it worked out well. I know the kids are going back to having some of the same issues, and I'm not sure if it's because we're all in the same room and we're all doing the video part of it. So we're getting the feedback and the echo from different areas.
Glenn, I'm sorry, I really couldn't understand very much of what you said. The echo is just wiping out anything. I don't know if other people are having the same problem, but I couldn't understand most of it. Do you want me to participate in conversation tonight, or you want to wait till a different time?
I think it's very time, wait till a different time, but still having all the issues with the audio piece here. I don't know what's still happening.
One thing is to be an issue.
All good.
Like,
Yes, ma'am. My speakers are off.
it's not showing.
You want me to shut the mic?
Shut your mic off. There we go. Glenn, try talking now.
Is it still an echo?
No, that was fine.
That's fine.
It's a very slight echo.
So we're better now?
Yes.
That's much better, John.
Okay. Rich, we better, Rich?
Yes, I can hear you very good, Glenn.
Okay, good. Well, thank you, folks. John, if you want to bring them up, we'll definitely listen to what you have to say in regards to them.
You want to do that now, or is it a different time during your meeting, or?
Why don't we do it? We can do it now. You can bring up some of the concerns that you may have.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. The first and probably the most important one is the lawnmower. We've talked to a few people, and we've looked at some things online, and we've discussed this quite a bit. And it's not that we are opposed to getting a new lawnmower or used lawnmower fixing the problem that we have with the current one. It's just that the process that's been used, as near as we can tell, is not adequate for justifying spending $115,000. We mentioned a couple of possibilities. One is to actually investigate and look at getting a used mower. That seems not to have been looked at all. We think that it should be as part of the process. The other thing is that this mower is very big. This mower seems to be bigger than the mowers that they use on golf courses, as near as we can tell from reading of them. And why we need something that big all of a sudden is, I think, going to have to be explained better than explanation that we've been given so far. And the cost during this time when it is so tight on money doesn't seem to be justified. And we wonder whether or not, if we would suggest that it be pulled from this meeting and some time spent and to investigate it more thoroughly and brought up at whatever the next town meeting is. There's no real push to have it done at this annual town meeting. We do not think that the town would approve it in its current state because we don't think enough work has been done to justify this cost, including we understand that it's taking $3,000 to $4,000 a year to repair things, and you can go an awful long time at $3,000 or $4,000 a year and not add up to $115,000. So that in a nutshell is our concern about the item on the mower. There are two other items which are related to each other, we believe. One is an item for $14,000 for storage containers, and another related item is an item for I think it's $14,800 for renovation and construction in the old library. The problem with the storage containers is that this is not the right solution. Some of you may remember years ago with the old town hall of having the, let's say, opportunity to go into the basement where the storage records were kept. It was almost a toxic environment. Things get moldy very quickly. One of our members runs a small business and speaks firsthand about what really should be done in the process of saving records and creating records in a form where they can be accessed and saved appropriately. We understand that there are some potential bylaw problems in town with some of the bylaws, and that we would need to have those changed before you can get away from paper storage for everything. But we think that the effort ought to be made to change the town bylaws or bylaws of any subcommittees to do that, and go with whatever restrictions you're held to by the state. But the effort should be made to get rid of as much paper as possible. And so that what we would like to see is
This conference will now be recorded.
We'd like to see more of a process where, starting from the beginning, we address the problem of the records and then only then spend any money to put them in a shape where they can be archived, but not just spend money for moving the storage around from one place to another. That we don't see as anything but a waste of money. The third item is the renovation of the old library. We understand that there is in fact space for the public buildings, people within the building that the highway department has. We understand that it is not in shape right now to be a very good workspace, but there is enough space there, and that can be cleaned out and fixed up to the extent necessary so that public service department can have an adequate place. Our understanding is that the library basement was originally thought of as being a place to house a couple of additional town employees who have been on the request, who were authorized, I think, a couple of years ago to work with the town administrator for grant writing and for additional work that needs to be done. And that since there is no real space up in the town hall, space would be needed for offices for that person, that the thought that the basement of the library was a good place for that. And we don't have any objection to that. But we don't think that but we know that for this year, that's been taken off of the authorizations. And so without that amount of money allocated for hiring someone, if we're not planning on hiring someone for that purpose, we don't think we should start on this process of creating a brand new workspace when it's not needed for a different sort of purpose. So those are the three articles that we have a problem with and would probably recommend against to the town meeting. They are also, though, three articles that if they were just withdrawn from this town meeting and some more time was spent on working up what we think would be an appropriate approach to be able to justify them, that we wouldn't have the same problem with being able to make a recommendation that these should be gone ahead with. So that in a nutshell is what our position on those three. Thank you.
Well, thank you, John, and I greatly appreciate that. And no, you made some good points there, and I know where I am with it. And I mean, based when these first came to us, speaking for myself, and I'll let the other two board members speak for themselves as well, is just to give the opportunity to the town to make that decision whether or not they feel it's the right time or not. You know, that's where I sit from a board seat, is to let the residents decide whether or not, if they feel it's the right time, the appropriate time to do those things. You know, I can speak to the lawnmower. You know, if that's what they look at, that's what they feel they need. I'm not that person. I don't know, you know, the amount of lawn yards are cutting and stuff like that. If that's what they need, they're the experts, I guess I'd say, in that part. And if that's what they feel they need, a machine that size, then I'd have to, you know, I'd have to take what they're saying on that part. I know as far as like storage of the public records, this is an issue that's been going on for many, many years. This isn't something that happened overnight. And I think we need at one point, sooner or later, to take action on it. A storage container, I guess I look at, maybe is not the best answer, but I think it's an answer where we need to start taking action on it. I know myself working for the state, that's something we had to do because we actually ran out of storage for documentation. For, you know, so we actually had the state purchase a couple containers to start storing documentation in it. And some documentation we have to keep 50 years up to 100 years. So that was the solution that was brought forward at that part by the department I work for. That was, you know, authorized and approved by the state to use that system. It may not be the best system, but I think we need to start taking action, because I think the documentation and where it is now isn't getting any better. You know, I've known some of the documentation that being on the planning board that was done in the old library down there in the basement, and you know, it's brittle. Just because it sat there, it hasn't been, you know, hasn't been put away correctly, and so on and so forth. So I just think it's a time that we need to start taking some type of action on that. And I guess that's where I'm coming from, that point. In regards to a public service and their office, you know, that's something you know, we could talk to the highway department and see what's available there too. But I want to make sure that, again, that's a feasible place, and we're not just clearing out a spot to stick someone in a corner, if you will, on a desk or something like that. I would hope that it's a feasible spot, and you know, the employee that we're putting there feels comfortable, and it's a good work environment, a good workplace to do that. But also I look at, you know, also taking some steps to start renovating the old library. It's a great space, and I don't think as a town that we utilize it to the potential that we could. And I think we need to start taking some steps to renovating it. And, you know, it has a new lighting system in there. It has a new heating and AC system that was put in there recently. So some things have been made to that building. I think we need to keep moving forward with it. So that's my take on it. And on those particular ones, John. And again, it's more to letting the people decide what they feel, you know, as a voter, as a resident of the town, what they feel what they think the need is. So, Ken, I know you and Jay want to speak to that at all.
Yeah, I just unmuted myself. I'm gonna agree with John Rivera. I would like to see the grant writer, the planner, and the conservation person put back out there. I mean, we need them. As far as us being the managers of the select board, it's our job to give the select board employees, I mean, all two of them, Kathy and Chris, the resources to do their work. And right now, they're so backlogged with stuff. Just regular work, COVID-19 work. I mean, when's the last time we did meeting minutes? If you look at the website, it's not their fault. They need more resources so they can concentrate on their work. And I think we should hire the grant writer. We should hire the planner / conservation. And then John said, if we put that back on the table, then they'd have no problem with renovating the old library. I really think we need them. It's our job as managers to give our employees the appropriate resources to do their job. And that's the way I'm looking at it. I know I was never,
Right. No, I'm not saying, but I'm saying that at this point, the person, the two people you just spoke to or spoke about, and the workload, was okay with it not being, as far as not being there this year, just based on the funding and stuff like that. But I understand what you're saying, Jay. I'm not disputing that.
I mean, if you look at the website, the meeting minutes and all that stuff, it's our responsibility to give the employees the resources. I mean, I did a cursory look at the website. When's the last time we approved meeting minutes? It's not her fault. She's got other things to do. If you look at the different committee meetings, there's been no meeting minutes posted for the finance committee since 2016. We need in-town resources so our two main people can get their priority work done and go from there. I really do.
Well, I think those things is just my opinion quickly on that. As far as that was the assistant, I know that Chris was actually talking about if they could find someone that could work like 20 hours a week, would make that, fill that extra piece there. And they couldn't find anybody that wanted to work those 20 hours a week and do that at the time. So I think I agree, that's something that they always looked at down the road. But I'm more so as, as what John was talking about, as far as the lawnmower, storage containers, the public service highway department, that I think that's a little different topic than what John was really referring to. Yes. Yes.
The issue with the mower is the fact that now I'm just
Hey, Chris is muted. Nobody can hear him.
Nothing that's been said has been voiced loud enough to hear. It's just quiet.
Can everybody hear him? No one can hear Chris right now? Can you hear me? Okay, Chris, talk. No, why can't they hear you? Sitting right next to me. Can you hear Chris now?
You cannot hear Chris clearly. And from our perspective, it looks like the mic on his computer is muted.
Yeah, Chris is actually sitting next to me, and if you can hear me, I'm not sure why you can't hear him. Try it again.
You're coming through perfectly, Glenn, but Chris is not, it's just a muffled voice in the background.
How about right now?
No.
All right.
Now is okay.
All right. The issue is when we were looking at purchasing a new mower, we went onto the state bid list to be able to utilize them going out and already having vetted various vendors to get the proper piece of equipment. Dave DeRozier, Jeremy Carrier, and Russ Arnheimer, who fixes and works on these units, all went to a trade show and looked at the various units. They came back and this was the recommendation that they have. When you look at buying a used piece of equipment, the problem becomes is the ability to get repair parts. We have a zero-turn mower right now that is maybe about 3 years old. And Jeremy could probably verify this with me. You can't find spare parts for it. They're on back order. They're not carried on the shelves because it's an old mower. 3 years for them, for the vendors, is an old unit. They do not carry parts for units beyond that age. And for instance, Jeremy was looking for a nut to hold on a blade for the zero turn. Went to the vendor, it's on back order. The part comes from Mexico. He can't get the part. The problem is if we go with a used piece of equipment, we're gonna run into that even more. And the problem is when the mower's down, it's down then for a week, possibly 2 weeks. And we can't afford that because it puts us so far behind that he'll never catch up again. But I still like to have Jeremy possibly talk to the board about stuff of that nature.
I'd like to hear from Jeremy. Jeremy, you wanna-
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, in talking again, this is something that we didn't take lighthearted and just jump and say, I want a new mower, I want the biggest mower, I want the best mower. As Chris has said, we actually went to a trade show. It was an all-day event, had over 130 different vendors there, of which at least 15 had mowers. Spoke with all the different representatives after we had already done a lot of research prior to going to the trade show. So we didn't go something set in our mind already, but we had a good idea of what we were looking for equipment as far as the durability, any type of warranties, the type of fields that we have to mow. So again, Russ Armhammer, who has been doing all of the repairs on the old Jacobson mower that we're currently using, went with us. Brian Pike, who also does a lot of the mowing or has in the past for the highway department, which we have now taken over, went with us because he's also a substitute mower. Should we have a lot of times where we're on vacation or we're to be out sick, Brian would be the one doing it. And Dave, of course, was there because he was actually one of the organizers of the event. So we did a lot of looking at the equipment there. We brought back a lot of information. From there was a used mower, of which they did have. I heard the finance committee's finding the other day with Rich saying that you could find one at $35,000, $40,000. There was nothing in that range for a used mower. Happy if there's something out there now, but the biggest issue that we had with a lot of used things, and speaking with Dave DeRozier, again, became parts availability and the amount of time it takes us to get something in. Just speaking of our experience this past month, where we had a broken axle, a drive motor assembly for the rear view unit, tie rod ends, and tie rods. Took over 3 weeks to get a mower from off of the field to back on a field to work again, because it took that long to get the parts in to get it taken care of. This is a mower that's 8 years old. The one that was brought up to me about finance committee saying, how come we're going from a mower that back then was 50,000 and now we're at about 115,000. The other thing is, as we were looking at the equipment back in September of this past year in 2019, The price had not increased in 2 years, but with all of the tariffs and everything that are going on steel, the price then went from 95,000 to 115,000. So we have to figure in that there are going to be cost differences from year to year with different increases. I also wanted to take just a moment, again, because before the highway department did all the mowing, I'm not sure that even all the public or the town people know this, that we took over mowing for behind the high school, next to it and in front of it. We took over Dufresne's Park, mowing the entirety of that lawn. And we took over Brown Ellison. That's what the large mower would entirely be used for. It could also be used for behind the highway garage, which is a large field area there with all of their septic, because that is also an area that we are responsible for. So it's not like a small area. All the rest we do at 0 turns. The wear and tear on that, the Jake that we have now has a lot to do with the suspension and the type that's in there. So we also researched that with Dave and with Russ Armhammer to find out what would be the best piece of equipment. And because of some of the new suspension technology that's out there, we believe that the wear and tear would be less on this newer Toro that we're looking at. Does the Board of Selectmen have a direct question or something they'd like to hear from me about that?
Chairman, one question I had, you referenced used mowers or pre-owned mowers. What were some of the costs that they were going for at this point in time? If you know, what was like how old were they?
I believe they were three to 4 years old, depending on what we were looking at. Most of them did not have the complete cabs on them. So they were more of the open style. So therefore you wouldn't have any type of protection over the driver cab area. You wouldn't have air conditioning. You wouldn't have protection from the rain. I believe at that time they were going for the mid-50s to $60,000 without a cab. And again, it was 3 to 4 years old, and I'm not sure what the hours were at that time.
Okay. Well, this is important too. I think people realize too is how many hours are on the machine versus how many years and how old they are, because a 3-year-old mower can have a lot of hours on it versus a 4-year-old mower can have fewer hours. It's based on the hours of use. So, all right.
Right, and then as Chris had mentioned, and it's not true for every single piece of equipment, but again,